The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Marcus Aurelius wrote those words not as a poet or a philosopher sitting in comfort, but as a Roman emperor surrounded by pressure, chaos, responsibility, and uncertainty. And yet, even from the throne of an empire, he knew the battlefield was not out there, it was within. The soul, the mind, the inner world. This is where every victory begins, or where every defeat takes root. Each morning, as the world still sleeps or stretches into wakefulness, we're given a quiet gift. A window, a moment, a pause before the noise begins, before the phone lights up, before the headlines roll in, before the demands start barking. In that moment, we are not yet who we were yesterday, and not yet the person we will become today. We're in between, and in that space lives a rare kind of power, the power to shape the direction of the mind. This is why the Stoics treated the morning as sacred, not in a religious sense, but in the sense of importance, reverence, intentionality. They understood that how a man begins his day is how he trains his soul, that the tone you set in the first few moments after waking isn't just routine, it's strategy, it's self-defense, it's mental warfare preparation. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, didn't write his reflections in the evening. He wrote in the early hours, preparing himself for the day to come, reminding himself, every single morning, that he would encounter selfishness, rudeness, ignorance, pain, and injustice, and that it was his duty to remain steady in the face of all of it. His journal wasn't just writing, it was armor. His words were shields. His mind, sharpened like a sword before battle. Every morning, you are faced with a decision. It's not dramatic, but it is decisive. Will you take control of your mind, or will you let it be taken? Will you lead your thoughts, or will you be led by them? You may not realize it, but those first few minutes after waking up are a crossroads. Down one path, intention, clarity, strength. Down the other, reaction, confusion, vulnerability. The Stoics knew this. That's why they placed so much emphasis on preparation, not just for battles, but for the ordinary, subtle chaos of life. Because they understood that our default mode is not wisdom. It's not peace. It's noise. It's distraction. It's being pulled in 1,000 directions by things that don't matter, but feel urgent. And this is why morning matters. You see, the world is coming for your attention, and it doesn't knock politely. It kicks down the door. Notifications, news, algorithms, opinions, all waiting to hijack your mind before it even finds its footing. If you don't protect that early hour, you become a servant to noise. You give away your sovereignty before you've even had a chance to choose who you are today. But if, like the Stoics, you claim those first moments with discipline, with silence, with thought, you reclaim your power. You train your mind before the world tries to train it for you. The modern world will tell you to wake up and check your phone, to scroll, to compare, to react. But the Stoic path is different. It's slower, quieter, stronger. It says, wake up and check in with yourself. Examine your thoughts. Observe your emotions. Clarify your intentions. This is the path of mastery, not over others, but over self. And self-mastery always begins with self-awareness. That's why the Stoics journaled, meditated, and reflected, not to feel good, but to prepare. Not to escape reality, but to face it head-on with calm. And that calm doesn't come from chance. It comes from the way you speak to yourself the moment you open your eyes. Marcus Aurelius would often write to himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That wasn't a quote for display. That was a reminder, a ritual, a truth he needed to burn into his own soul every single day. So what does this look like for you? It means resisting the urge to jump into distraction. It means sitting, even for just a few minutes, with your thoughts. Asking yourself, what kind of man am I choosing to be today? Where am I placing my energy? What's within my control, and what isn't? This is not passive reflection. This is preparation for war. The war against self-deception, against emotional reactivity, against the subtle poison of comparison and complaint. Imagine the difference. Two men wake up. One rolls out of bed and scrolls. He reacts. He absorbs the world's chaos. He becomes a mirror of what he consumes. The other wakes up, sits in silence, takes a deep breath, and chooses his first thought. He writes a line in a journal. He reflects on virtue. He anticipates adversity. He doesn't pray for ease. He trains for strength. Guess who wins the day? And this isn't just philosophy, it's neuroscience. What you do in the first 10 to 30 minutes after waking sets the neurochemical tone for your brain. Whether you begin with chaos or with calm, whether your mind is reactive or focused, you're literally programming your brain's default state. The Stoics didn't have the science. They had wisdom. They didn't need brain scans to know that a man who disciplines his thoughts at dawn walks through the day differently. He responds instead of reacts. He listens instead of judges. He leads his emotions instead of being led by them. This is the man the Stoics sought to become, and the man you can be. But only if you decide, each morning, to take the path of presence over panic, intention over instinct, discipline over distraction. Discipline your mind every morning, not because it's trendy, but because it's necessary. Because life is too unpredictable. Because storms will come, and the only true shelter is the one you build inside yourself. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." The morning is when you make that declaration. The moment you stop being the man from yesterday and become the one you need to be today. But this requires practice, repetition, a commitment to showing up for yourself when no one's watching. Before the applause, before the challenge, before the world demands something of you, you must demand something of yourself. So tomorrow morning, before you check the world, check your mind. Before you consume anything, create space for your thoughts. Read a line from the Stoics. Write a sentence of intention. Take 5 breaths and remind yourself that peace is your responsibility. That you don't need to control the world, only your response to it. Because if you don't lead your thoughts, they will lead you. And they will not lead you somewhere noble. They will drag you into resentment, into anxiety, into weakness, and then, slowly, into a life you don't recognize. But if you lead your mind with discipline and clarity, even for just a few moments each morning, then you begin to live by design, not by default. And over time, your soul, as Marcus said, becomes dyed with the color of your thoughts. So choose wisely, choose with strength, choose with virtue, each morning, before the world begins. That's the Stoic way. The first thought of the day sets the tone for everything that follows. It's a truth that hides in plain sight, ignored by most, but understood by the wise. You wake up, your eyes open, and in that moment, before you reach for your phone, before you speak a word, your mind is clear, soft, unshaped, like clay before the sculptor's hand. And whatever thought you allow to enter first, that thought becomes the mold, the shape, the foundation for your day. This is why the Stoics treated the morning as sacred. Morning is the mind's most vulnerable time, and paradoxically, its most powerful. Vulnerable because the mind is open, raw, unguarded, easily influenced. Powerful because that openness is fertile ground. You can either sow clarity or chaos, discipline or distraction, intention or confusion. The seed you plant in that first moment will grow. That is not poetry, it's psychological law. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, warrior, philosopher, knew this intimately. In his meditations, he wrote to himself, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." This wasn't just a feel-good reminder. It was a mental framework, a conscious choice, a defense against the poison of forgetfulness. Because it is easy to forget, isn't it? Easy to forget that waking up is not guaranteed, that breathing is not owed to you, that life is not a burden, but a gift. When you forget this, you slip. You allow the trivial to overtake the essential. You allow your mind to be shaped by things outside of you, before you've even met yourself. And so, the Stoics insisted, train the mind before it meets the world. Because the world does not wait. The world comes at you fast, loud, urgent, messy. If your mind is untrained, it bends, it breaks, it reacts. But if your mind is trained, it meets the world like a rock meets the sea, unmoved, still, unshaken. So how do you train the mind in the morning? How do you begin your day like a Stoic? You begin by remembering that the first thought is a gate, and you are the gatekeeper. You choose what enters. You choose what colors your soul. You might be tempted to say, it's just a thought, it's harmless. But the Stoics would disagree, because they knew all actions begin as thoughts. All character begins as thoughts. All destruction begins as thoughts. So if you want to be wise, You must begin where all things begin, in the mind. When you wake up and immediately check your notifications, what are you telling your mind? You are saying, external things matter more than my own mind. You are giving away your sovereignty. Your first thought is not yours, it's theirs. The algorithms, the world's, the noise. And then you wonder why you feel anxious. Why the day feels heavy before it even begins. It's because you skipped the ritual. You let the world train your mind before you did. The Stoic reverses this. He wakes up, and before doing anything, he breathes. He pauses. He reflects. He sets an intention. He chooses a thought worthy of being first. Maybe it's gratitude. Maybe it's resilience. Maybe it's just the simple awareness. I am alive. This is enough. And with that, the foundation is set. The soul is dyed with calm. The day has direction. This is not some mystical routine. It's strategy. It's what the Stoics called rehearse, the ability to choose one's inner attitude, regardless of the outer world. The wise man doesn't trust the world to shape him. He shapes himself, every morning, so that the world cannot. You see, when Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that being alive is a privilege, he wasn't writing as a motivational speaker. He was writing to fight back against despair, against laziness, against the mind's desire to fall into comfort and forgetfulness. He was writing from within the war, from the battlefield of the soul. So imagine, what if you treated your own mind the same way? What if your first thought wasn't careless, but deliberate? What if the first 5 minutes of your day were sacred, non-negotiable, a training ground? Let's go deeper. In the early hours, your brain is still moving from sleep to wakefulness. Your subconscious is still active. The conscious mind hasn't fully taken the wheel. This is a neurological window, a moment of influence. Whatever you allow into your mind during this time has more impact than anything you'll encounter later. It sinks deeper. It imprints itself. It becomes not just a thought, but a mood. A mood becomes a behavior, and behavior becomes character. So when the Stoics tell you to reflect in the morning, to meditate on virtue, on mortality, on purpose, it's not ritual. It's reprogramming. It's neuroscience without the science. They understood it intuitively. They understood that a man who begins the day complaining is already weak. That a man who begins the day grateful is already strong. That a man who begins the day thinking clearly is already ahead. And that a man who does not begin at all, who rushes, who consumes, who reacts, is already lost. That's why the morning matters. It's not just about productivity. It's about sovereignty, about soul, about claiming yourself before anything else tries to. Marcus Aurelius, even at the height of power, did not skip this. He could have. He had armies, wealth, advisors, cities under his command. And yet, every morning, he reminded himself of death, of virtue, of gratitude, of duty. Why? Because power without discipline is decay. Because control of the world means nothing without control of the self. So where does that leave you and me? It leaves us with a decision. Every day, the same one. Will you begin the day with intention or with inertia? Will you train your mind or leave it open to chaos? You don't need hours. You don't need silence or incense or retreat. You need a thought. One thought, deliberately chosen. One breath, consciously taken. One moment of clarity before the confusion begins. That's all it takes to begin the day in strength. Try this. Tomorrow morning, before your feet hit the floor, say to yourself, today is a gift. I am not owed this breath. I am not guaranteed this moment. But I have it, and I will not waste it. Let that be your first thought. Let that be the foundation. And from there, everything changes. Because you are no longer reactive. You are active. You are not being pushed. You are choosing. You are not a victim of the world's momentum. You are the one creating it. And yes, the world will test you. It will throw its noise, its pain, its temptation. But a trained mind is not surprised. It is ready, because it has already prepared itself. It has already decided who it will be. That's the essence of Stoicism. Not perfection, but preparation. Not detachment from life, but direction in life. And it all begins in the morning. If the first thought of the day is chosen with discipline, then so too can the next, and the next, and soon, the whole day takes on that same discipline, that same clarity, that same power. So do not waste the morning. Do not allow it to pass by without being claimed. Do not surrender it to distraction, to laziness, to noise. Because the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. and the first color matters most. Remember this. Every morning is a chance to begin again, to become who you must be, to reject what does not serve you, to choose virtue over vice, strength over weakness, wisdom over impulse. The first thought is not small. It is not harmless. It is the compass. And if you let the world choose it for you, do not be surprised when you end up lost. So choose, and choose well. When the Stoics spoke of strength, they weren't referring to physical dominance or the ability to force the world to obey them. They were talking about inner strength, the quiet force of a disciplined mind, the clarity to face adversity without flinching, the composure to meet insult without injury, the courage to walk through fire without burning. To develop this strength, they practiced deliberately, and each morning, they trained their minds like warriors preparing for battle, not against others, but against their own impulses, reactions, and expectations. 3 core tools were at the center of this training: premeditation of adversity, self-discipline, and Stoic journaling. Together, these form a powerful morning ritual for anyone serious about mental clarity and control. Let's begin with the first. Premeditation of adversity, Praemeditatio Malorum. The phrase Praemeditatio Malorum translates to the premeditation of evils. But don't be fooled by the word evil. The Stoics didn't mean superstition or moral condemnation. They meant anything that could disrupt your peace: frustration, discomfort, loss, rejection, insult, delay, fatigue, ordinary obstacles, the everyday blows of life that most people try to ignore or pretend won't happen. The Stoic, instead, anticipates them. Each morning, you take a moment to mentally rehearse what could go wrong. You say to yourself, "Today, I will meet people who are arrogant, selfish, rude, short-tempered, impatient. I may be misunderstood. I may be delayed. I may be criticized. I may fail. And that's okay, because I am prepared." This is not negative thinking. It's not fatalism. It's not pessimism. It's preparation. Because when you expect everything to go perfectly, you are setting yourself up for resentment, for anger, for disappointment. The world is not perfect. People are not perfect, and neither are you. But when you rehearse adversity ahead of time, it loses its sting. It doesn't catch you off guard. You don't take it personally. You don't react, you respond. Marcus Aurelius, writing to himself in his meditations, reminded himself daily of this truth. Say to yourself in the early morning, "I shall meet today with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness, all of them due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil." This reflection wasn't bitter. It was clear-eyed, compassionate. It reminded him that human behavior often stems from ignorance, not malice. That his job was not to control others, but to control himself. That his peace was not dependent on the behavior of strangers, but on the discipline of his own mind. So imagine, just for a moment, you wake up and you tell yourself, "Today will not be easy, but I am not here for ease. I am here to grow." You rehearse the possibility of delay, of annoyance, of failure, not so that you walk through life with suspicion, but so that you walk through it with strength. Now when the traffic builds, or someone speaks to you with disrespect, you are not surprised. You already saw it coming, and you already decided, in the quiet of the morning, who you would be in that moment. Calm, unmoved, rational, free. That's the power of Praemeditatio Malorum. It turns the unpredictable into the expected. It gives you the chance to rehearse virtue before the test arrives. Which brings us to the second tool, self-discipline and willpower. The Stoics believed that the greatest freedom was not the ability to do what you want, but the ability to not do what you shouldn't. True freedom is mastery over desire, not obedience to it. Each morning, remind yourself of this. I control my mind, not my urges, not my mood, not my cravings. You are not a slave to impulse. You are not a machine triggered by pleasure or pain. You are a rational being, a human capable of choice. And so, the Stoic practices self-discipline, not occasionally, but daily, not when convenient, but especially when inconvenient. You say no to unnecessary indulgence, not because pleasure is bad, but because attachment to pleasure makes you weak. You say yes to discomfort, not because suffering is noble, but because comfort makes you soft. Voluntary hardship is the gym of the mind. Wake up and delay gratification. Resist checking your phone. Fast for a few hours. Take a cold shower. Walk when you could drive. Sit in silence when the world begs you to scroll. Not to punish yourself, but to sharpen your will. To prove to yourself, again and again, that you are not at the mercy of desire. Epictetus said it best. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. The world doesn't care what you believe. It sees how you act. And how you act under pressure is determined by how you train when no one's watching. So practice restraint in the morning. Begin your day by choosing something difficult and doing it anyway. That's how you remind yourself you are in command. And the best way to solidify that command, you write it down. Morning Stoic journaling. The Stoics wrote to themselves. They journaled not to track their moods, but to forge their character. Their journals were not diaries. They were battle plans. 5 minutes. That's all it takes. Sit in silence. Take a breath. And write. Start with a simple question. What virtues do I want to embody today? Courage, patience, discipline, kindness, forgiveness? Write it down. Let it settle. Let it become the tone of your thoughts. Then ask yourself, 1. What is in my control today? Maybe your schedule, your attitude, your responses, your effort, your words, your focus. Name them. That is your sphere of power. 2. What deserves my full attention? There is so much noise. The world will throw headlines, distractions, arguments, alerts. But what actually matters? What is essential? What needs your presence, fully and completely? Pick 1 or 2 things. That's enough. 3. How will I act according to reason and virtue? What situation are you expecting today? A difficult conversation? A challenge? A temptation? How can you meet it with calm, with logic, with integrity? Write the response now, so you're not improvising later. This practice doesn't take long, but the results are lasting. Because the act of writing clarifies the fog. It clears the emotional debris and centers you in purpose. You stop being pulled by the currents of the day and start moving with direction. Even one sentence can shape your state. I will not be disturbed by what I cannot control. I will meet pain with strength. I will respond with patience, not pride. These are not slogans. They are tools, weapons, even, for the soul. Because you will be tested today. You will forget. You will get tired. And the old reactions will try to take over. But if you've written, if you've rehearsed, if you've trained, you'll remember. You'll slow down. You'll breathe. You'll return to yourself. And the man who can return to himself, in the storm, in the noise, in the heat, that man is free. Not because life is easy, but because he has made himself ready. So now ask yourself, why begin the day by running toward the noise, when you could begin by grounding yourself in truth? Why start by reacting to the world, when you could start by choosing how you will face it? Why let the day decide who you are, when you can decide first? Premeditate adversity. Practice discipline. Write your intention every single morning, like a Stoic, like a warrior of the mind. Because your peace is not a gift, it's a practice. And the more you return to that practice, the less the world can shake you. So begin now. Begin tomorrow morning, and every morning after. There's a truth that echoes quietly in the lives of the disciplined. Those who walk through chaos with calm, those who face resistance without fear, those who carry clarity in a world addicted to confusion. That truth is this: mornings are the forge of the mind. Each day, before the sun climbs into the sky, before the demands knock at your door, before the world tells you who to be, there is a moment, silent, pure, untouched. And in that moment, you have a choice: to claim your mind, or to let it be claimed. The Stoics knew this. They understood that the strength of a man is not tested in the middle of the war, but in how he prepares before it begins. That's why they turned to their journals at dawn. That's why they meditated on adversity while the world slept. That's why they disciplined their thoughts before stepping into the flood of unpredictability. Because if you don't build your mind in the morning, the world will break it by noon. And so, the Stoics' day does not begin with noise. It begins with intention, not with scrolling, but with stillness. Not with reaction, but with preparation. Mornings are not just hours. They are mirrors. They reflect your values, your discipline, your philosophy. They reveal who you are when no one is watching. And who you are in that sacred solitude, that is who you truly are. Let's be honest. Most people start their day by consuming notifications, messages, updates, headlines. The mind is still waking, but already the outside world is inside. Already, the soul is scattered. Already, The mind is bending to external forces. There is no reflection, no center, just input. And then they wonder why they feel anxious, why they feel behind, why the day slips through their fingers like water. But the Stoic does not start this way. He understands that mornings are a ritual, not religious, mental, a ritual of sovereignty, of returning to what matters, of reminding himself that nothing outside can disturb his peace unless he allows it, that the quality of the day begins not with events, but with awareness. And so he starts with breath, with silence, with a question, who do I choose to be today? Not who the world expects, not who yesterday demanded, but who virtue requires. Because the way you begin your day is the way you live your life. If you wake in distraction, you live distracted. If you wake in reaction, you live reacting. If you wake in haste, you live in a storm. But if you wake with purpose, if you guard those first minutes with discipline, the rest of the day bends to that center. Because you are no longer led. You lead. You lead your thoughts. You lead your behavior. You lead your energy. And that leadership starts before your feet hit the ground. Think about it. When you check your phone before you check in with yourself, what are you telling your mind? You are saying, other people's voices matter more than your own. You are saying, the outside world is more urgent than my inner world. And when you do that, again and again, you forget who you are. You forget what you believe. You become a mirror of noise instead of a source of light. But it doesn't have to be that way, because tomorrow morning is coming. And with it comes the opportunity to begin again. To begin with clarity. To begin with strength. To begin with awareness. The Stoics didn't believe in waiting for the perfect moment. They believed in making the moment. And that's what the morning gives you, a blank canvas, a fresh battlefield, a sacred space where no one has touched your mind yet, and you alone get to shape it. So here's the invitation. Tomorrow morning, before you check the world, check in with yourself. Before the notifications, before the noise, before the rush, sit, breathe, reflect. What is in your control today? What can you let go of? What virtue will you embody? How will you respond when things don't go as planned? Who will you be? Not if, but when life tests you. Because it will. It always does. The world doesn't care about your plan, but your mind does. And if you prepare it, if you train it, you won't need perfect circumstances. You'll carry peace into imperfect ones. That's Stoicism. Not escaping life, but walking through it armored in reason. Not avoiding pain, but meeting it with meaning. Not chasing comfort, but choosing courage. And it all begins in the first few moments of the morning. Marcus Aurelius, emperor, philosopher, soldier, left us one of the most powerful reminders ever written. He said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is not a line to quote. It is a law to live by. You do not control the weather, the traffic, the mood of others, the market, the world, but you control how you show up. You control what thoughts you allow. You control how you respond. And that power, that unshakable strength, is something you build, thought by thought, morning by morning, discipline by discipline. So if you want a better life, don't wait for circumstances to change. Change the way you begin your day. Wake up as a philosopher. Wake up as a soldier of virtue. Wake up as a man who leads his mind instead of following his emotions. Because mornings are not trivial. They are transformational. They are where the battle is either lost or won, before the world even knows you're awake. So tomorrow, don't just rise. Rise with intention. Don't just move. Move with meaning. Don't just exist. Live, powerfully, clearly, courageously. And remember, the morning is your arena. The mind is your weapon. Virtue is your armor. And discipline is your guide. This is the Stoic path. Not someday, not later, tomorrow morning. Before you check the world, check in with yourself. And begin again, not as a victim of life, but as its master.